Hey, my name's Tom, and I'm about to share with you my journey as it unfolds, building an MVP for a startup idea that I have called Dream Team. The two key tools we're going to be using are Claude and Cursor. So Claude from Anthropic, we'll be using 3.5 Sonnet. It's $20 a month to get a Claude Pro account. Highly recommend that because you get access to what they call projects. A project is a bucket for where you can upload tons of context, right? Documents, slide decks, you name it, even voice recordings. And you can also tell Claude how you want it to behave in your interactions with it. In this case, we set up a Claude project. I'll talk about the details later, but we're running it in a web browser. And the other tool is Cursor, and that's a text editing tool, it's a coding tool built on top of VS Code with Claude AI built into it. So I guess it would be similar to GitHub's Copilot, except that it's running as Claude by Anthropic. So why am I doing this at all, right? I could be doing so many other things, but the Dream Team is a startup idea that I've been nurturing and sort of obsessing about on and off for the last year and a half. And I'm finally doing something about it. So what is Dream Team, right? Let's get into the why behind all the pain that I'm about to go through with Claude and Cursor to build this MVP. So it's focused on independent restaurants and coffee shops to turn new hires into confident, knowledgeable servers in half the time. There's a lot of pain for independent restaurants and coffee shops, right? It's a high turnover environment. It turns out it's like a 73% annual turnover, which is kind of mind-blowing. The average cost is, anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. Managers spend 10 to 15 hours per week on repetitive training, which is the key word there. And what's the negative impact here, right? 70% of negative reviews on Yelp mention service issues, and those are largely because of untrained, undertrained staff. All right, annual costs for employee turnover are closing in on average. For a 20 employee establishment, hovers around $50,000 a year. That's hiring costs, training time, lost productivity as a result, and just manager time being sucked up in this repetitive training. So the solution that I've been kicking around is like how to automate some of this, how to bring some of the training tools that Michelin star restaurant and corporate chains they have insane budgets to do this. Smaller independent coffee shops and restaurants, they don't have the budget for this. They don't have the time. They're squeezed. So how do we take the materials that already exist and turn those into smart, self-paced learning materials, right? So let's say quickly convert your menu, right, food and beverage menu into that dynamic self-paced learning materials. So AI-generated quizzes and flashcards, tests around ingredient knowledge and substitutions, and broadening that into general hospitality knowledge and scenario training. And we can offer video knowledge base where it's 80% driven by the staff themselves, right? So if the head barista can create videos on how to calibrate the machine in the morning, how to shut it down in the afternoon, how to measure the shots and all that stuff. Management can create videos on how to engage and disengage the alarm. There's a number of scenarios that can be supported there. And with all of that, especially with the training, there's progress tracking, right? Who's engaged? Which of your employees are scoring well on the menu and hospitality knowledge training? And this introduces a little friendly competition, which is healthy. Dream Team is focused on preserving revenue by giving your staff the tools they need to learn, even when they're not in the restaurant or the coffee shop. It's a big market. 500,000 independent restaurants, 27,000 independent coffee shops throughout the United States. Neither Square nor Toast seems to focus on training materials at all, not even in their third-party marketplaces. So to me, this is, interesting problem that doesn't have a lot of obvious solutions. So let's break this down. There's so much we can do. I've been a product person for many, many years now. And, this is my favorite part, right? Figuring out what to do first, right? So for phase one, I decided to focus only on the menu learning with AI-generated quizzes and flashcards. And we're only going to start with menu PDF uploads, right? We'll save for phase two and beyond, to handling online menus and scraping and parsing all that data. That can get really complicated. So we're going to process the data from PDF. We're going to send that to Claude. We're going to get a bunch of data back from Claude that's well structured and take that data and build interactive training materials. We'll introduce some simple progress tracking through the training materials. So imagining a staff member at a coffee shop or a restaurant that is using these flashcards and quizzes, they'll have a sense of progress through that material. And all this will be mobile first. So let's take a quick spin through the Claude project for Dream Team. You'll notice that in the Dream Team project, on the right here, there's a project knowledge section. I've fed a couple of key documents that I had been working on over the past months. One of them is the Dream Team restaurant startup idea. This is a long document that started small but grew over time as a combination of desk research on the hospitality space, the independent coffee shop and restaurant space, as well as having one-on-one conversations with employees from these types of establishments and owners and managers. So this document is key. It has a lot of my thinking, a lot of the sort of raw research. So I uploaded that. Claude now has Google Docs integration. So that's very helpful. Uploaded my pitch deck outline as it was at the time. And then it's a summary document that sort of kind of kicks off this project. I have an idea for a startup called Dream Team. It's an AI-powered tool designed for restaurants and coffee shops to revolutionize the way. And interesting thing is, in this one, I tried to test Claude's ability to be a strategy partner. And so I led with what I had in my initial pitch deck and my initial strategy that I came up with. As a secondary feature, I led with AI-based employee handbooks as my primary feature. I told Claude for this project, this is how I want you to behave. This is what he's over. You're a one-part investor at a venture capital fund and one-part visionary and product strategist. Think Steve Jobs. And you'll have me, my coach, guiding me through the journey of turning my startup idea into a viable business. With a combination of radical honesty and tough love, I expect you to challenge my assumptions and keep me focused on the most important things. Right? So after setting the context and telling Claude how I wanted it to act, I started a conversation in that project. I gave it a title, Shaping for Product Strategy, Shaping the Vision for Dream Team. I asked it at Claude, knowing what you know about my product, help give me some tips. Basically, in a nutshell, it told me that my strategy was backwards and that based on the research that I shared with you with it, I should lead with the employee training materials and not the handbooks, which of course I agreed with 100% because I was hoping that it would detect that change in strategy and help me get back on track. And, it was good. And then, we workshopped back and forth and helped me to sharpen the MVP. But it's great. It's even built the interactive calculators that I can use, an impact calculator that I can put on our marketing website to show, okay, if you have staff of 30, your annual turnover rate is 73, which happens to be the industry average. You get this real-time impact calculation. And here's all the raw code that I can use to drop it into an HTML page and launch it. But yeah, so that was my starting point. So I did a lot of some strategic back and forth, seeing how Claude behaves as a sparring partner. And it's been great so far. And still nothing like, having a real mentor, but it's mentor-ish. And then what we'll focus on in the next segment here is how I started building the MVP. So the first few days of this project, I wanted to just focus on getting something up on its legs as quickly as possible. it was time for me to get familiar with talking to Claude and using the code that Claude provides for me and assembling it all inside Cursor. And so what you're looking at here is I've got Cursor here with the files that Claude has helped me to write. I've got the browser open on the left with the dev build of Dream Team. And down here is terminal, again, inside Cursor. So this is running now. It's a really simple web app. I can browse for a menu. I'm going to go to test menu PDF, which I created really quickly. It's Google Doc, exported it to PDF. It's the simplest of simple menus because I didn't want to get into edge case city and trying to figure out how to handle multi-column menus and menus that have lots of fancy design. So I start here and then we'll improve over time. But if I can't get this basic menu to import, send to the Claude API and get the JSON data back in order to build interactive training tools, then I'm screwed. So I want to start small and then increase the complexity as we go. So let's upload that. And the code that Claude helped me write has all kinds of error logging so that we can see what happens, right? And what you're seeing now, this is not what it looked like day one, day 1.5, even through the day 2. Every time I would try to run the dev server, it was littered with console errors. So what you're seeing here is the end of a very stressful hair-pulling back and forth, and which I wish I recorded. Would have been kind of amazing for posterity. But what you're seeing here is that it's running through all the code that we had written. It's pulling and processing the PDF, extracting it, sending it to the Claude API. And for that, I set up a Claude Pro account. I got my Anthropic API key, and I stashed that inside my project files. It references it every time it sends to Claude. And we ask Claude in this, where is it? Claude Client TS, where we're basically structuring a prompt, right? Analyze this menu, or focusing on brevity, descriptions, spit out JSON, and then, that's where we end, right? We get this structured response back from the Claude API, and we're not yet doing anything with that. So going forward, the steps you're going to actually see in real time as I'm working my way through this. So that's it. That's where we're at for now. Let's get into some of the gory details of how Claude helped me get this thing up on its legs. All right. So the first thing that Claude helped me do was to put together the actual PDF uploader component, the UI that people interact with to pick a PDF and start the process. So it actually very quickly wrote me this code, right, and instructed me what to do with it. It tells me what's happening. So throughout this process, I'm actually learning a lot about I'm not building a production-ready app. I'm building a prototype, an MVP. So I have this, the first page we started with was the menu upload TSX file. All right, as you can see, there's tons of code here. Then we moved on to the PDF processing and Claude integration. So that's, creating another file, which is called, this would be right, the Claude utilities, Claude client. And this is, telling Claude what to do with the data, sending it, and again, passing my key, and then drop the key so that the Claude ACI will respond. This was a lot of back and forth, right? And as you can see here, I had a lot of questions. And I was running into tons of errors that were showing up inside Cursor. And whenever I had an error, I would ask Claude questions. I would always paste in either a document that had all of the error logging in it, some information that would help to debug. Right. So in this case, I got an error, ZSH command not found. This is early on, right? This is still me setting up my development environment. And then it's great. It walks me through starting, installing Homebrew, making getting everything installed, installing Node. So let me skip ahead. So here's a case where I told Claude, I'm having problems here. I got this error. And every time it responds with a really calm, cool reaction. It's because we need to make our page client component. So it's hyper aware of everything that's happening throughout this conversation. And it's constantly spitting out code that I can then drop into the right place. And in certain cases, I ask it for the entire code for a file because I didn't have the patience to hunt for where it should go, and I didn't want to break things. But as you can see, this is scroll hundreds and hundreds of messages back and forth. Here's a case where I got tons of errors, so I had to paste a document with all the errors. And as long as you have the patience, Claude has the patience to hammer out the issues and debug it. And after all this back and forth, I did hit the token and message limit. I didn't even think about that until I hit the wall, and it told me I couldn't use it for 5 hours, which was good because I needed a break. Aaron collected my thoughts and came back and continued using it. But long story short, that's how we got to where we're at now. And I recommend just having a ton of patience, structuring your questions as clearly as possible. So next, we're going to talk about pivoting, going from a simple web app to a React Native version of this so that it can run in iOS and Android. And that's where it gets interesting. After getting this basic web app version up on its legs, I started to feel more comfortable interacting with Claude and using Cursor to assemble the code, organize the project file structure, and make my way around terminal to install and update packages, to run the dev server. And then I went back through my initial drinking strategy documents and was reminded that this is mobile first. And I wanted to really push myself into uncomfortable waters. So here I am asking Claude, before getting too deep, I'm thinking about changing this to a React mobile app using Expo. I do have some experience in Expo, one startup I worked at when I was chief product officer. Our CTO, co-founder, left the company, suddenly disappeared, and I was left with my finger in many holes in the dam. And one of them was getting the Android version of our app out the door. It was trial by fire, and I learned all about building, deploying apps and using Expo and submitting to the app stores, Google Play Store and Apple App Store. So it was a crash course, and that was many years ago. It's funny how things in your life, you learn them for a reason, and you don't know why they're going to be useful. And now here I am about to embark on building a native app using Expo once again. And of course, Claude's response was, yeah, most of what we built can be ported to a React Native Expo app with just a few adjustments, right? Or we'll have to use, React Native PDF handling, using React Native's document picker because we're going to be running in native environment. We'll convert some of the UI components from Tailwind classes to React Native styles. The good thing is that the Claude API integration and all the code that we've written is largely unchanged. Great. And Claude also reminded me, based on the context it has about the product, that this makes sense because it's better suited for restaurant staff use. There's native file handling. There's the potential for offline capabilities and the potential for push notifications for study reminders. So this is awesome. This is like having a spitballing partner. It reminds me of working with my engineering counterparts and the many roles that I've had. These are the kinds of things that like they would always surface. Like, yeah, there's a real benefit for going down this path. So it walked me through setting up an Expo project using existing code, and walk me through the process of porting over, modifying each of the key files that we have to getting them to work. So I used npm installed the Expo command line interface, initiated a new project. I called it Dream Team Mobile. We installed the Anthropic SDK, React Native, PDF, utilities, all the dependencies that we would need into the project file structure. There was probably hours of back and forth just getting this new development environment set up. Thankfully, as mentioned, I had some memory of using Expo from almost 10 years ago. That's scary. I'm going to actually go into that project now. I'm going to stop the dev server from running. Let's go to our Dream Team mode. Still not a great. Let's see. Let's do Dream Team Mobile. And here we are. We're in the Dream Team Mobile directory. And I know that I have some recent commands. Let's go to npx start and let's do npx expo start clear. Right. I've already got the Expo project running. The code had been modified. So I'm going to run that. And this is going to start Expo's gears turning. And when Expo builds, it gives you a QR code that you can scan. I'm an Apple guy, so I'm using an iPhone as my physical device. I can use the Apple Camera app and scan my QR code, and it will launch the Expo Go app that I've already installed, and it will run this Expo dev build on my phone. It also gives me some other options where I can open iOS simulator, which I'm going to do. Cursor told me that I didn't have Xcode installed, right? So I had to install everything to get that up and running, but here you go. You can see that it's opened in an iPhone SE 3rd gen, and it's launching the Expo Go app running on this virtual simulator. Now it's launching the project. These Expo builds tend to take 10x the amount of time a normal app would take, but it has nothing to do with how it will perform in the production environment. This is after all the hard work of porting, which was only a fraction of the work initially. Okay, so this is the development menu. I can open it anytime. Can have things. Great. So I will be able to browse for a menu on this virtual iOS device because there are no files in the file system, but you can see where I would be able to. I'm using right now what you don't see is on this phone. Once to access files, manify content. So I'm going to do a little research about loading files onto a virtual iOS simulator. But when I run this on my phone, it works as expected, as we saw with the Red Hat version. So it's pretty exciting. Went from a simple HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Did a quick pivot 2 days later and switched to a React Native code base so that we can run it in iOS and Android, and have the ability to test it in the simulator and on my physical device itself. So that is where we're at with this project. And according to Claude, our next steps are going to be now taking the data that the Cloud API sends back after processing the menu and start building our interactive flashcard UI. And from this point onward, this is real time. You're going to see this in all of its gory detail. The product manager, the team to product management for the way of product design, slog through some very technical stuff in order to get this MVP prototype out the door and into customers' hands. So thanks for playing along so far. Wanted to say a few words about Claude Pro's message and token limits. Going into this, I was super naive and thought, wow, I'm paying $20 a month. I can chat with this thing all day long and it will spit back as much code and, you know, as I needed. It was great. Like the first day, as I started my conversation in Claude, it felt like I can use this thing forever and keep asking it. What I learned very quickly was the longer a conversation gets, the more tokens it burns through, right? And so in order for it to answer a very simple question, it's always going back and understanding the full context of the thread. So, it's a thing that snowballs. It's an exponential kind of thing. In the beginning, there's not that much context to pour over, and it just works until it doesn't. But then I found, after Claude told me that you need to not use this for 5 hours, come back at 2 p.m. when your quota is reset, that staying in the same conversation, I would hit the limit in 3 or 4 messages, and I didn't know what was happening. So I did some research and found out that, yeah, there are some limits. So the workaround that I found out was just start a new conversation. So I was worried, though, that starting a new conversation would lose all of that rich context. And what I didn't want to happen was that Claude would start introducing bugs by not having full context of everything that it had helped me build. And that actually works now in a 99% bug-free manner. So I asked Claude how to work with it. And so as you can see here, my question to Claude was, if I start a new conversation to work on the next stage of Dream Team, what's the best way for you to maintain context? And a very simple answer. It said, here's the way to do it. I will help you give me context, right? And to do that, I'm going to build you a context sharing document, and you can fill in the details. So it's basically a brief summary of what we've accomplished. To help me with that, it's aware of everything that happened, a current snapshot of the structure of the project, and then the key files that we should track. And then when I start a new conversation, all I would have to do is upload that document. And so here is the document structure that it recommended. And there's placeholders for some things, right? But it started with progress summary, current project structure, and key files to track. So it lists the files, and then there's a spot to paste in the actual content. So I did exactly that. I exported this into a text file. I went through my React Native files and copy pasted the code into each of the slots. And then there's a section for remaining development plan. So it has context for how it should guide me going forward. I prompted it for, I said, tell me all the files ahead of time that you think we're going to need, and the sort of approach that you would take. So it broke that down into what we'd need for a flashcard system, what we would need for the app navigation system, for data management, and for general user interface enhancements, and then a detailed breakdown of the next steps. And then current issues and challenges. At this time, when I hit the quota, I couldn't use Claude anymore in the browser. So I switched to using the Claude chat built into Cursor, which, I'm sure there's also a quota there, but I have not hit it yet. Because one, my code base is pretty small, and I haven't been asking it the same intensive questions over the course of 2 days. The Claude inside Cursor helped me resolve a bunch of issues with a lot of like JavaScript type issues, not typographies for the non-technical people following along, supporting utilities and packages. And it got the Expo project to run perfectly. So in my document, my context document, I also added some notes about some of the problems that Claude helped me fix inside cursors. And I put in the actual code that it suggested that I replace in a few places. I wanted, when we started a new conversation, for it to have 100% context so that we can seamlessly move on to stage 2. And, we have a whole lot of headroom now with our token quota. And that is where I'm going to leave off on episode or step 1 of this process, or video 1. The next video, we're going to pick up where we left off here and start adding, in a new Claude conversation, we're going to start adding the flashcard functionality. Thanks for following along.